I suppose it would help if my microphone was unmuted. Oh boy. Well, I had an interesting day at work today. So, I work at I'll just say it's a Kroger company. And it's only there momentarily. I'm actually getting hired on at another place. So it's only there for the moment. Hey, Bridget. Anyway, so I go into work today. I've been working overnights, and I've only been working there for like 4 months, and I've had maybe 10 minutes of training in the last 4 months. Hi, Angel. So I've only been working there for 4 months, and I've had 10 minutes worth of training. So I let them know that I'm probably going to be leaving them soon, and they probably shouldn't bother training me anymore because I'm going to be leaving in like a week or two. But my manager decides that she wants me in today. So I'm like, all right, well, you already know I'm leaving. So if you want me to come in during the day instead of overnight, yeah, I'll come in. I'll come in for training. And she would see what I did and ask me how I did it. I'm like, well, this is how I did it. And she said, well, there's your problem. I'm like, yeah, no kidding. I have no training. What do you expect? No one's told me how to do things. I've been just kind of doing it on my own, stocking shelves and stuff. And then we go to another place, stocking the freezer. It's like, how do you do it? How do you stock the freezer? I'm like, I do it this way. It's like, well, no wonder. I'm like, yeah, no one's trained me. It's like that they expect me to know the optimal or peak way of doing things without anyone showing me. All right, logic. But oh man, what really got me was the attitude. I'm sitting there like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. And she's like, yeah, you don't. I'm like, wow. You do realize this is not my fault. It's your fault for not training me. It's not my fault for not being trained. Anyway. So, earlier today, I posted on Twitter that I was going to be telling a couple of different stories. Let's see. I have a story about a dream I recently had, which is kind of weird. Let's see what else. I had a story about condoms and condom theft at a store I worked at. And I've got a story about the dumbest pharmacy tech I ever worked with. So, I'm going to go ahead and get the easy one out of the way. It's probably the most scandalous, but it's a really short story. But it's the mystery of the stolen condoms. So, I was working at a Walgreens, and I worked as a photo manager, but then I worked as the inventory guy for a little bit. But the inventory guy was not a job you wanted because the previous person had no idea what the hell she was doing. So when I took over, I'm like, oh, this is a mess. Anyway, so my whole job there was to count the shelves to see what we had in stock. Take all of our damaged products that we have in a bin in the back and 1506 it, which is basically get rid of it. Count it as being damaged or expired and then throw it away. It wouldn't be uncommon to have people steal condoms just because people that steal stuff are just the worst anyway, but it's more likely for them to steal an item that they really don't want to say, hey, I want to buy this. Like people walking up to a cash register and saying, here's my package of extra small, please. You know, it's probably something that you don't want. A lot of people don't want to do. So occasionally, about once every 2 weeks, I would find an open box of condoms with nothing in them. I'd be like, all right, well, whatever, fine. I actually had a kid that came in, and he was a kid. He was man. I worked there up at the front end for 5 years, and I saw this kid go from being a kind of a quiet, nice kid to strung out in 5 years. He was like 13 when I first saw him. Well, maybe 10, whatever. And then at 15, the kid looked like that he was on speed all the time. It was really sad, but he would come in. He came in on one occasion, and hi, Mark. He came in on one time, and whenever he came in, he always stole something. And so when he came in, the kid had red hair and glasses, so, and not, I mean, it's an uncommon feature. So people knew who he was when he came in, so we'd always just kind of watch him. And one time, another customer pulled me away for a second from watching him, and I go back to where this kid was, excuse me, and he was in our family planning aisle, and I go, and there's 5 open boxes of condoms, nothing in them, and I'm like, what? I wonder what happened here. And at Walgreens, you weren't supposed to, like, you had to be really passive. You could not accuse anyone of anything or have anyone empty their pockets or anything or follow anyone. Most that they'll have you do is just say, hey, is there anything I can help you find? Try to get the person to think, oh man, they're onto me, but like they didn't want us to do anything. So I have 5 open packs of condoms. And so I go up to the kid, and as I walk up next to him, I could hear him walking, and his pockets sound like this. And I'm like, oh, come on, guy. Oh. Because he knows that we can't really ask him anything. We can't tell him to empty his pockets. And I know he knows that. And I just go up to him and I just say, is there anything I can help you with today? He just says, nope. And then walks away from me as he's walking away. Anyway, back to the original story. So, working as the inventory guy, once a week I'd find an open pack, or once every other week I'd find an open pack of condoms. But it started off as being like once a week, and then like a couple of times a week. I'm like, okay, this is kind of a trend. This is kind of weird. But me being the guy, whenever it came to anything about drama or anything, I don't gossip or anything. If something dramatic happens with another employee, I intentionally try to steer clear from it. So it goes on for about a month, where it would be like one pack a week to like 2 packs a week to 3 packs a week, and I'm like, holy crap. I knew that there's a problem of someone stealing. I just didn't know what the problem was. So we had around the same time we had a manager leave to another store. So come to find out, a couple of years later, when I finally quit the job, or got fired. I actually got fired from Walgreens. When I finally got fired from Walgreens, I finally said, okay, what's all the dirt I missed? Because I didn't want to know anything when I was there. I didn't care to know anything. As soon as I wasn't there, I'm like, okay, fill me on what happened. So apparently, around the same time that the condoms started going missing once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, whatever, I come to find out that one of the managers was having sex in the office with one of the, I think she was 18-year-old girls that was working there after work. I knew that she was in high school. I'm pretty sure she was 18, but man, apparently they got caught somehow. I'm sure the cameras caught him somewhere. But that would explain the reason why the condoms were going missing once a week, twice a week, and so on. But they didn't get fired. They just said, okay, you got to transfer, which is strange. Like, if you're, like, in any other job that I would think that you'd be at, if you're caught, like, messing around at work, like, aren't they going to just fire both of you? That just seems like the most reasonable thing to do, right? That's what kind of surprised me, anyway. So, that was the short story. That was the short condom story. So, I'm going to talk to you a little bit now about the worst pharmacy tech I ever worked with. It's a longer story. I've got to tell you a lot of different things to get you to the final end. So, not going to use any names. We'll call the guy Bill. So, I was working at a pharmacy at Walmart. And we were short-staffed. We just had a guy... I think we just had a guy quit. Or cut down hours. Oh, I remember what had happened. Is that... when our store first opened, we were transferring a girl from another store. And she worked at our store for a week. And then she went on maternity leave for about 4 months. And then she put in her 2 weeks. So, like, after we finally got her transferred, took us like 2 weeks to get her transferred over to our store. Then she worked for a week, and then she was gone for 4 months, and then she finally quit, and then we had to find someone. So we were down, when the store first opened, we were down really one person for 5-6 months. Just because we were depending on this person. I mean, I mean, it's her call for going on maternity leave and quitting if she wanted to, but it still kind of sucks. Anyway, so we had to hire someone after this girl quit on us. And my pharmacy manager at the time was a really nice guy. He's super nice. One of the kindest, soft-spoken people that you'd ever want to meet. He actually, let's just say he sent in a joke to Laffy Taffy when he was an adult. I guess adults do that. Anyway, really super nice guy, but a terrible manager. So he starts hiring, and he opens up a job request to, find someone, have permission to find someone through the company. He does that, and then when he's in the lunchroom that day, he talks to this kid, Bill, and he's like, "Hey, Bill, it'd be really nice for you to have you in the pharmacy if you want to have an interview." And Bill's like, "Oh, sure." Bill at the time was 18, just out of high school, just totally green, no medical knowledge or anything whatsoever. So he would have had to have been trained as a tech, go from 0 to having medical knowledge, whatever. So Bill was hired, and he seemed like a really nice kid. He really was a nice kid. The first couple of times he was really slow, which happens when you first start off with new people. And then a week or two goes by, and he's still really slow. And then another week goes by, and he's still really slow. And so it gets to the point where you're like, okay, why is Bill not catching up to speed? Come to find out that Bill actually told another employee that was there, is that, oh yeah, my interview was the best interview that I ever had. All we did was talk about BMX bike riding and skateboarding the whole time. Like, oh great. So we got a kid that the only work experience he's had is just retail, which is fine. But like the whole interview process was just talking about skateboarding and BMX bike riding. I'm like, oh man. And then we're into like week 3 with him, and he's still really super slow. Now, what I mean by slow is that in the pharmacy, there's a number of things you have to do. Let's just say, excuse me. From the time the prescription is dropped off, someone has to type it up. After it's typed up, the pharmacist looks at it and checks it off. After it's checked off, a pharmacy tech fills it. Then the pharmacist checks to see what the tech filled, and then the tech bags it up and then sells it. So it's a step-by-step process. Bill would only fill, and that rhymed, and I wasn't intending on that rhyming, but that rhymed. So Bill would only fill, which is the easiest, and everyone wants to fill because they don't have to deal with customers. Like, whenever you take prescriptions, you have to deal with customers. When you sell prescriptions, you have to deal with customers. And no one wants to do that because customers are jerks. Not all the time, but, I mean, retail. So Bill would always fill, and let's just say I was a above average tech filling, and I would probably fill a prescription at 30 seconds, maybe. He would take 2 minutes. Literally, he would take 2 minutes. So 4 times slower than a normal person. And he wasn't trying to get faster or anything. He was just going at his own pace. And we're telling our other manager, we're like, man, Bill kind of needs to pick up some speed. Needs to kind of pick up some speed in order for us to be able to, like, maintain. Because right now, normally it's just 2 techs and a pharmacist. So if Bill's filling, the other tech's just running around trying to keep your head above water. Bill later tells us how he got fired at his other job. And it's kind of a fair warning. He's going to, he said kind of a bad joke. Well, I wouldn't say bad joke. It's a joke in really poor taste. I'm going to repeat it, so just because the only reason why I'm repeating it is to show you how idiotic this kid is, that he's willing to repeat this back to us. He tells us, and he's laughing as he's telling this because he still thought it was funny. He got fired from his previous job because he worked at a department store that had a bunch of coat hangers in the back. And then he thought it would be funny to tape a sign on the back, tape a sign on the rack that said free abortions. Yeah. As he was telling this, I was like, that is horrible. Oh my goodness. Like it's like, no, that's just I couldn't believe that this kid was sitting there, like, still thinking that was hilarious, telling us this, and he's only been there at this time for like a month, and we're like, oh man, Bill, what have we gotten ourselves into? He would always, he was even known to say that he likes it when it's busy because it's a lot funner when it's busy, which is stupid because he would still go at his own pace, and everyone else was just scrambling because he was dragging everyone else down. Anyway, so this goes on for a few months, and we finally, December or the winter months are the worst for pharmacies, just because that's when everyone gets sick. Everyone gets sick in December or in wintertime just because of flu season and cough and cold, whatever. And we had to deal with Bill throughout that season, and it was the worst. We had another tech she had to cut her hours just because she was always scheduled with Bill and that other pharmacist. And all they would do is just chat about BMX, bike riding, and skateboarding the whole time. And snowboarding, whatever. Excuse me. So, come to find out that Bill was... I'm sure that there are other stories I could tell you about Bill, but I'm just going to kind of skip over towards the end. Anyway, so we finally get through winter. It's like January, February, and then he tells us that he's going into the military, which we're like, oh, good. Get out of here, Bill. But the how military service works here in America is that if you go on training, if you go to training or if you get deployed or whatever, you get your job back when you come back. So it's like, oh, good, he's gone, but we got to try to find someone that only worked temporarily, because he's got to have his job when he comes back, because that's the law. And again, he's still typing. Yeah, he's still filling. He's not doing any of the typing, not doing any of the selling or anything. I even had to go and tell my managers on a couple of times that whenever I was busy and he was filling, he would look up, see a customer waiting to be helped, and go back down and start filling again, when it's supposed to be his job to go and like cover that station. He's supposed to rotate, and he never rotated. He kept numbers about how many times people typed prescriptions up, filled prescriptions, and sold and stuff, and he was always 0 on the other categories and a bunch on that one. But whatever, he was the manager's favorite, I guess. So he tells us he's going to be deployed to the Navy, and this kid was a lazy sack of crap. And I just thought he's not going to last a week there. He's going to be sent home. So I think it was like March-ish. Yeah, it was about March, beginning of March, when he was supposed to leave. So let's just say it's middle of February. Middle of February, he tells us that, oh, he has to go up to Salt Lake to do some sort of training. He got a Facebook invitation from the Navy to go up to Salt Lake for training. So he had to like walk out one night from work. And then, I mean, if anyone here knows any sort of like communication, like, you're never going to get any sort of military communication from the government through Facebook. I mean, that's how you get these like Nigerian like IRS scam things, is through Facebook and all, whatever. So we knew it was a load of crap, because no one from the Navy is going to send a message and saying, hey, you need to be here, through Facebook. But my manager lets him go. He comes back later. He ends up going to another military thing, and this one was actually legit at another time. And he's already gone through normal. Well, he hasn't gone through any training or anything like boot camp or anything, but he knows. He's been formally told how to address officers and stuff like that. And he tells us, again, he's smiling and laughing to us, while saying that there was a admiral at the party, and he just walked up to the admiral and put out his hand and he says like, hey, how's it going? Like, he got reprimanded for not like saluting and stuff, you know, what you're supposed to do in the military. And I'm just like, yeah, this guy's not gonna last. Excuse me. Oh. Oh man. Woo. Sorry. So yeah, gets reprimanded for not like saluting and whatever. So it's now the beginning of March, and he's gone. We managed to get another tech into the pharmacy. He would be the third worst tech I've ever worked with, but that's for another story. So we get the third worst tech I've ever worked with to come in and work for the worst tech I've ever worked with. So it was an upgrade, I guess. But I've worked with probably 20 techs in my life. But whatever. Anyway. So we get a message from Or our boss gets a message from his dad. His dad would come in fairly often and just shoot the breeze with us. About a week and a half after he was deployed, he got discharged. Well, not deployed. He got sent to boot camp. A week and a half later, at boot camp, he got a medical discharge. Yeah, medical discharge. It wasn't for anything physical or anything. Medical discharge from the Navy. So, you know what that means? That means he went to boot camp for a week and a half, got a medical discharge, so he has full benefits for life. He has military benefits for life. He can go to the and get I don't know, different kind of healthcare and get different rates on loans and stuff. Like, he's set for life because it wasn't a dishonorable discharge or anything like that. It was just a medical discharge. So he gets that discharge and he's in Washington, and this is about the time that Trump and Clinton were campaigning. So this was a few years ago. So they were both on the campaign trail. And this kid, Bill, was at a Trump campaign rally and was quoted as a military veteran in the Wall Street Journal. This kid that spent a week and a half in boot camp and got a medical discharge because he's a pussy. Okay, sorry. But, I mean, it is what it is. And gets discharged, gets benefits, and is quoted in the Wall Street Journal as a military veteran at a Trump campaign rally. I'm like, how does all this stuff keep on happening? So my manager was all for this kid coming back. So we had to tell our assistant manager, hey, you got to tell this guy. You know, like, it wasn't just me. Like, no one liked working with this guy. Because he was such a drag on the whole system. He wasn't just... The way pharmacy works is if the cogs aren't working right, it slows everything else down. So it's not like... I mean, literally, you would have been better off without him because he wouldn't have at least been pulling everything else down. So when he came back, my manager's just we finally convinced my manager just to tell him, yeah, we just don't have any hours. Sorry, can't have you come back. And then finally he said okay, and he got a job at a paint store and was fired after the second day. After the first day. So it was on the second day of working he got fired because he did something stupid. So he was allowed to be in our pharmacy for 6-7 months, with numerous people complaining about him, and to our manager, not just the employees but the customers too. And he works at a paint store for a day and a half, and that was enough for them to fire him. But it took us 7 months to get rid of him. The dumbest clown I've ever worked with. Not the craziest person I've ever worked with. That's yet another story I'm not going to tell you tonight. But definitely the dumbest person I've ever worked with. Ooh. So how are you guys tonight? Have any questions, comments, stories before I tell you about this weird dream that I had? Give it a second for the chat to catch up. Angel said, truth be had, can't even count the number of times I pretended not to see a customer and have to deal with them. Yes, I think we've all been there. Even at work today, I was stocking a shelf or whatever. No, I was on my way back to our stock room. And I thought I heard someone try to say, hey, hey. But I'm like, nope. Just kept on walking. It's like, I don't know. I didn't hear him. The guy was just saying, hey, I don't know who he's referring to. Bridget says, you do not get a message like that from the Navy. Yeah, I know. And we were even telling our manager at the time, is like, you let this kid go because he said that he got a Facebook message to a required Navy thing. And it's like, you fell for that? Angel, you have your last exam on Thursday. What's your subject? Advanced Forensic Science Unit. Okay. Yeah, let me pull all my knowledge I have on that subject. There you go. That's all the knowledge I have on it. Actually, excuse me. Actually, Angel, there were a few cases here in America where this was a number of years ago. This is like 5 years ago when I read this story. But it was in the news where they were starting to have to tell jurors in court cases that forensic science does not work like it does on TV, because a lot of jurors were finding people not guilty when the prosecution had sound evidence. Just because they said, well, why didn't you do this? I saw this on TV. Yeah, Americans are dumb. Well, there are dumb people everywhere. It's not just Americans. But, there's no... When people can't tell the difference between what's fantasy and reality, and they're deciding someone's future, that's really scary. Let's see. All right. Well, let me tell you about a weird ass dream I had. So this happened a couple of nights ago. I remember the dream began with me and my girlfriend were going to Las Vegas. We were flying to Vegas. And then we decided that we were going to drive to California to Disneyland. So, and we're going to meet my family there. So, let's see. That. So, I got to Disneyland, and I met my family there. And they're all gathered around. My brother, my mom, my brother's wife, and my niece and nephew. And I had to get into some sandals for some reason. I didn't have any pants. but I had to get some sandals. And all they had were flip-flops, so I said, okay, let me get some flip-flops. So they had me some flip-flops. So I would turn around and I lose track of where my girlfriend went. But I said, you know what? It's about 3 o'clock. I'm going to go ride. I decided I was going to go ride the Haunted Mansion ride. But the Haunted Mansion ride actually looked like... If you ever played Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo, all the barrels and the minecarts, it looked like a minecart race. So I got out of the minecart race, and I met up with my brother and his wife, and they decided that they were going to go gamble there at Disneyland, of course, because that's what you do. And I said, well, maybe I'm going to go ahead and try this coin pusher machine. So I go up to this coin pusher machine, and I put some money in, but then it breaks. Well, no, it doesn't break. Okay, it doesn't break. I find a way to steal all the money out of it. I think I was just putting my hand up underneath the slot and like pulling all the money down. And then there was a security guard that came by and another guy, and I'm like, oh, I'm just fixing it. And he's like, oh yeah, well, here's a screwdriver. And I'm like, okay. And I pop it open and I start repairing this coin pusher. And then I realized that the other guy was a pharmacist I worked with, or that used to work with. And I'm like, oh, hey, I worked with you like 5 years ago. And he's like, yeah, I worked with you. Hey, you want to come up and visit my family? I'm like, well, I'm here at Disneyland. But okay, you only live like 5 minutes away? Cool. So we go to his house, and it's this big mansion, because I mean it's like a multi like 5-6 level high mansion, like it's like a office building type of thing. So I go in and let's see. I wrote this down because when I wake up from a dream, I have to write it down. Otherwise, I definitely will forget. Let's see. Oh, that's right. I go up to his house and I'm like, oh, hey, here's your wife. Here's your kids, whatever. And he wants me to fix a picture frame for him. So I'm like, okay. And all it needs is like, it's weird because it oh man, I can't stop coughing. Sorry. He wants me to fix a picture frame for him, and the picture is weird. It looks like it was a family portrait, but his wife and kids were all cut out of the portrait, like ripped out of the portrait, and it was just a picture of him. They wanted me to put in the picture frame. I'm like, oh, this is kind of creepy, but okay. So I put it back in the picture frame. He looks at it, he's like, oh man, that's perfect. Hey, do you want to fix these stuffed animals I have too? I'm like, what? And then I look around and there's like basically it looks like all these stuffed animals without the cotton inside of them were just laying around on shelves up in his house. I'm like, I don't know. Disneyland is going to be closing here in a few hours, and I want to go ride some more rides. Like, okay, yeah, you can go. So I start walking down, and I get down to the bottom of his house, at the ground level of his house. And I walk into this, it looks like an Old West gift shop, like a saloon gift shop. Like, that's the best I can describe it. It looks like an old-timey, I'm an old claim jumper, I'm going to go and sell you some pops and some sarsaparilla. You know, it's one of those, like, old-timey saloons, but it's like a gift shop. And I'm like, oh, you've got a gift shop here in your mansion, of course. He's like, well, you did help me fix that picture frame. And I know you only have a few more hours until Disneyland closes. So here's a bunch of candy. And he starts piling like all this candy in my arms. Like these giant candy bars. And I'm like, oh man, yeah, this is definitely worth it. Like I really don't eat sweets a lot. I'm more of a salt person. But he's like, oh man, here's all this candy. I'm like, oh man, sweet. I got like 20 candy bars in my arms. I'm like, yeah, this is gonna be great. I get to share it with my girlfriend. Share it with my niece and nephew. This is gonna be great. And so I'm walking back out to my car, and it's kind of an alleyway, like a dirt alleyway between his house and where my car is. Like my car is like 100 yards off, so I've got to walk a little bit. And here comes up these guys, walking up to me, and they're saying, "Hey man, you're dumb for buying all that candy here at a theme park when you can get it cheaper at Walmart." And I'm like, "Hey man, it was free." And the guy was like, "Oh," and then walked off. I don't know. I'm just repeating what I wrote down. Okay, then I walk over and get into my car. And I notice in my car, right by my car is let's see. There was a parking enforcement officer right next to my car. I'm like, oh, great. And she says, "Hey, you're parked here illegally." And I look up and I see that there's a sign that says, it's a tow zone. And I'm like, wait, when I parked here, that sign wasn't there. Because I don't remember me parking my car in the earlier part of the dream. But I do remember that I guess I didn't park in a no parking zone. I don't know. So I tried telling her, "Hey, that wasn't there. I don't know. That wasn't there." She's like, "Well, your car's not registered either." I'm like, crap. Well, then she says, "Well, let me see your license and registration." So I pull it out and give it to her. And as I'm trying to explain the situation, she says, "Well, this car is probably going to be towed." I'm like, crap. I've got all this candy and I got to get back to Disneyland before it closes, and you're going to tow my car? So I say, "Well, let me get my car and let me sit down for a minute." She's like, "Okay," because that's what cops let you do, I guess. And so I go and sit down in my car, and this parking enforcement officer notices some construction on the other side of the road, and she goes and walks over to try to tell him, like, "Hey, you guys can't be doing all that over here." And I get my car and I turn it on and I start creeping closer towards the road. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I'm just testing the tires. Don't worry about it." He's like, "Oh, okay." He goes back and starts telling the construction crew, like, "Hey guys, you guys gotta settle down." And then I take off in my car. Just start driving down the road. I end up getting on the freeway, and then I couldn't find my way back to Disneyland. And then I woke up. One of the weirdest dreams I've had in a long time. It involved fixing a picture frame, candy bars, fixing a coin pusher, flip-flops, and Disneyland. I don't know. Dreams. I highly recommend, because I use my phone as my alarm when I wake up in the morning. I highly recommend sending yourself a text message of what you remember from a dream as soon as you wake up. Just jot it down. I mean, the reason why I know the reason why that pharmacist came up in that dream is because I recently unfriended him on Facebook. Oh, no, on Twitter I did. Well, both on Facebook and Twitter. Because we never talk, and I usually just go through my contacts and I clean them up after a while. I remember looking at his picture when I was cleaning up, and I'm like, "Oh man, this is a nice guy," but like, we will never talk to each other again, because he now lives in another state. And I was like, "Well, fine, okay, I guess I'll get rid of him." And then that night I had a dream about him. But it's kind of interesting that you can kind of look back on some dreams and kind of see what really kind of affects you. Because I still feel kind of bad about removing him as a friend on social media, but I don't know. He worked at Walgreens with me, and I guess the less I remember about that place, the better. So those are the three stories. Those are the three stories that I came to YouTube with today. the short condom story, the worst tech ever, and that weird dream I had. Anyone else have any stories? Any questions, comments? Let's see. Oh, Angel, you said that your boyfriend's actually playing Donkey Kong right now. That's kind of weird. Oh, and the juries think it's completely infantile. The forensic thing. I don't know. I mean, we still have people that believe. I mean, we have flat earthers. We have some people that just won't believe that the earth is round just because they haven't really seen it. I don't know. I like to be a skeptic about a lot of things, but there are just some things where it's like all you have to do is just do a little bit of research and then find out that, oh, okay, well, that's what that means. Your boyfriend's avoiding doing his essay. Well, if you want to look at it this way, C's make degrees. Oh, infallible. I see. Oh, what has been my favorite job? Oh, that's a weird question. um, Pharmacy, believe it or not, has been one of my best jobs, and that makes me want to cry because, I mean, I've had some really crappy jobs, and if that's the best out of all of them, I mean. But what's been my favorite job? My favorite job that I had was just for like 2 or 3 months in the summertime here in the town I live in. There was a really tiny trading card store. What I mean by trading cards, like the Pokemon card game, Magic the Gathering, you know, trading cards like that. It was a really super teeny tiny store. It was probably, the dimensions of the store was probably, I don't know, 12 feet by 24 feet. I mean, it's definitely smaller than a convenience store. But one summer, I worked there. I was probably 15 at the time, so I wasn't old enough to actually have a job. But the store owners were wanting to spend some time with their family that summer, and they said, well, if you wanted to, you could work here, and we'll give you a pack of cards for every hour that you work. And I'm like, sign me up. At the time, a pack of cards was $3, but it cost them probably $1.50, $1.80. So they were paying me $1.80 an hour to work there at that card shop, which was fine. I was 15 years old, and I mean, it gave me an excuse to go to that card store every day because, I mean, it was summer for me too, and I really liked to go there. So it was just more or less for me to go there, hang out with my friends, and man the cash register and make sure that some kids didn't steal, which I did run down a couple of kids once, but meh. One of the store owners thought that these not dish soap, but these bars of soap containers would make excellent card containers to hold your decks with, which was, looking back at it, was a stupid idea, but like she would sell them. She would buy them for like $1 and then go to her shop and sell them for like $3, whatever. But these two kids had to have been like 7 and 9. Ran off with 2 of them. And I chased them down for about a block and got them back. Whatever. Just told them that they couldn't come back to the store. They would never went there to spend money, so whatever. But yeah, $1.80 an hour working at a card store. But I got to hang out there all the time, so it was okay. I mean, it gave my mom it got my mom off my back for hanging out there all the time. I was like, "Hey mom, I'm getting responsibility." Joke's on me though, because the time period when I was working there was one of the worst times it was to be a Magic player. Like the cards out of the sets for that time were really worthless. Well, there's a few of them that are worth a bunch of money, but for the most part, they're worthless. So, yeah. I don't want to go too much over an hour. I know with the first stream that I had, I almost went for 3 hours. But yeah, I didn't. I had a couple stories I wanted to kind of share with you guys tonight, and answer any questions or something like that. But if anyone has any other questions or anything, feel free. Any comments? Probably be ending it in about 5 minutes unless I get on another story. But yeah. All right. Well, I think that about does it. Oh, excuse me. I'm gonna cough again. Ah. Oh, Angel. Well, soon enough you'll be able to say YouTuber is my favorite job. Honestly, I mean, that would be my goal, is to do... I don't want to, like, make a super ton of money doing... I mean, okay, who am I kidding? Everyone wants to make a super ton of money doing this. I'm more practical. My practicality would be to make enough money doing this where I could get an apartment and do this full time. Like, to be able to do something like this full time and have, like, 1 or